Meanwhile, with Japan, over the past few years, Australia has signed both a Reciprocal Access Agreement for their forces and a joint declaration on security cooperation. So, Patrick, taking these defence agreements as a whole, how do we see, because we've identified, that China is a security challenge or threat for Canberra, how do we see Canberra strengthening its defences with these that we've picked out against China?
So again, Indonesia and Papua New Guinea is the closest landmasses to Australia. And Papua New Guinea is a former colony of Australia. At the closest point, and when you're Australia, you don't have a lot of close neighbours, but the closest point between the last Australian island and Papua New Guinea is, I think, 3-4 kilometres. It's the only close neighbour they actually have. So that one is, and again, if from an Australian point of view, if there were a Chinese military base or a close military cooperation between PNG and China, that would be a nightmare scenario. Because to the northeast are these shipping lines which go to the US. If there is any conflict, that's where your aid would come from. So Australia is trying to secure these northern approaches and to multi-align, you could also say, with different countries, like-minded countries as they call them. The Philippines is a treaty ally of the US, like Australia is itself, Japan, the same. So this hub and spokes, the hub doesn't work so well right now, so the spokes have to work together well more.
That's a good point.
And Alex, is it also about sort of pushing that defence line further north, isn't it?
Yes, yes, definitely is. And again, you don't want, Australia don't want to be surprised, right, on this northern side, correct? Speaking of the Pukpuk Treaty, for example, I recently spoke to a scholar at PNG. PNG has always been asking Australia for a long time for a treaty, for a long time. But in the past, Australia was not as interested. And PNG is very, very aware that it has its own security consideration, particularly on the West Papua side, But, in an alliance, when you do sign a mutual defense treaty, the partners are always worried about two things. Number one, being abandoned. Number two, being entangled. So from the Australia side, they have to consider, am I going to be entangled, if I sign a treaty with PNG? But because PNG has a comprehensive strategic partnership with China as well, and China is involved in many of the economic development side of it. So naturally, I think Australia wants to, is now interested.
So it's to kind of like to prevent a vacuum that China could fill?
Well, I think it could be that, but it certainly wants to make sure that that there's no surprises there, right? So if they sign, now that they have a mutual defense pact with PNG, then it secures that side of what Patrick was talking about, the northern side, right?
And there's a certain frustration in some countries in the Pacific that until China showed up, the Australians didn't really care. And now, the Chinese are here, we have to do something.
It's part of the so-called step up, right? So the Pacific step up. So using that term is actually interesting because if there was a step up, it means to say that in the past you stepped down.
Okay. And I wanted to talk about, the fear that Australia has. I mean, what is the direct threat from China?
Well, one is the sea lines of communication, and the north again. Almost anything Australia exports, which is mostly raw materials, iron ore, coal, agricultural goods, they go somewhere north, either Northeast Asia, North America, or even if you go westwards toward the Suez Canal, it's northwest. Again, everything which comes in comes from the north.
So as Indonesia controls those?
Most of Indonesia, and more to the east, it's PNG, Solomon Islands, the East, Western Pacific, yes.
Okay. In a recent National Press Club event, the Japanese ambassador to Australia, Kazuhiro Suzuki, called for a more equilateral security triangle with the US by deepening defense ties between Japan and Australia. He also said that the two countries were allies in all but name. Take a look.
Our bilateral relationship is defined as special strategic partnership, and why Japan regards cooperation with Australia as the central pillar of coordination among like-minded countries. Australia's national defense strategy describes Japan as an indispensable partner. It is also why our relationship is often described as being allies in all but name.
So, Alex, would you agree with that? Allies in all but name?
Yes, to a certain extent, because the word allies is quite tricky, right? If you say that you're allies, there is a commitment for mutual defense, and I'm not sure that that part is necessarily achieved. But yes, I mean, they're very, very close. They're in Quad. They have other exercises, and the common part here is what the ambassador mentioned, right? Both Japan and Australia are actually treaty allies of the United States. So the call that I hear is more of what I would call middle power agency, right? Because the issue is right now, so when he uses the word equilateral security triangle, I'm not sure whether that third angle is really engaged right now. You know, they're too busy domestically. So that's one reason why the middle powers have to do something, right? Because they cannot just let the security situation decay. They also have to maintain, you know, a regional order that will sustain regional economic growth. So. So that makes sense.
So that's a very good point, Patrick. If that's the final question, how much is this? We talked about Australia having all these, defense arrangements. How much of it is also the Trump administration and maybe uncertainty around that?
Well, Australia is definitely worried about the Trump administration. Well, I think everybody is. But they have traditionally fear of abandonment, being at the end of the world. On the other hand, they put in a lot which is in interest of the US. One example is this new submarine base which is being built in the Western Australia, which gives the United States much, much better access to the Indian Ocean. So Australia has quite a few things to put to the table. Unfortunately, President Trump looks always only at one or two indicators, defense spending or your trade deficit, and he doesn't seem to see the whole picture. In the whole picture, I think Australia is in a relatively good position. The question is, does President Trump see it that way?
I think what I see is when these middle powers start acting, is that for a long time we've always talked about the international relations of Asia Pacific. We don't have a formal security framework. Maybe this time around the middle powers can start talking first, and then see what we can come up with, because there are definitely lots of interested partners here. It's not just Japan, it's not just Australia. You have South Korea, New Zealand, Indonesia. Everybody's vested in the stability of the region, right? So outside of the two great powers, there is room for the smaller nations, the middle powers, the small states, to come up with a framework that works, because the region is not only China's or the United States, it's ours. We live in the region, so we have a stake in the region and its stability.